to remember that they're changing my voice. So these are key proverbs about love. Proverbs 15:13, a happy heart makes the face cheerful, but heartache crushes the spirit. And we couple that with Proverbs 17:11, we get the evildoers foster rebellion against God, and the messenger of death will be sent against them. And that has everything to do with romantic injustice, right? Whose spirit is being crushed and why? So when people choose mere emotion instead of principles, they end up waging war against God because they're crushing the spirit of the righteous, right? They're marrying the wicked and trying to get the righteous to settle or to be gay or to just leave. And the spirit of that area becomes wicked because they're warding the spirit of God. So again, it says, evildoers foster rebellion against God. The messenger of death will be sent against them. Verse 15, acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent, the Lord detests them both. So the Lord detests when people condemn the innocent. He detests when people break the heart of the righteous for the wicked. And then when you look at why they did it, because they chose the wicked, it's because of their lack of prudence, their lack of scrambling to do the right thing, their lack of scrambling to make sure that their relationship decisions are sound. Okay. It goes on to say in verse 17, one who has no sense shakes hands in pledge and puts up security for a neighbor. And that has, implications on marriage, right? It's like a pledge. They're vows. They're pledging to be with each other through sickness and health, through richer and, for richer and poorer, what have you. So if they have no sense, then they shake hands in pledge for a reason that is faulty. They go out on a limb, they follow their mere emotions, and they don't choose to do so for the right reasons. So they don't choose to marry for the right reasons, to date, what have you. So we go to, and I'm going to kind of cut this video short because it's very windy today, and for whatever reason I'm having more trouble here downtown than I did in Westcliff. So verse 20, one whose heart is corrupt does not prosper. One whose tongue is perverse falls into trouble. So if their heart is corrupt, they don't truly spiritually, morally, mentally, and romantically prosper. They also don't prosper, right? That's why Marshall is marital scramble, Christ is the bridegroom, because you don't truly prosper. You might, be an Olympic athlete, which is not the same thing. You might win a kumite or some martial art tournament. That's not the same thing. To truly be the top martial artist or a great martial artist, one has to have a pure heart. One whose heart is corrupt does not prosper. And one whose tongue, one whose actions are perverse falls into trouble. And the word perverse is like the word perverted for a reason. To have a fool for a child brings grief. There is no joy for the parent of a godless fool. And again, you see the implications back to back, right? These implications on marriage, right? In Proverbs 15, it says heartache crushes the spirit. In Proverbs 17, it talks about evildoers fostering rebellion against God. And the messenger of death, right? Their soul dies, right? Their soul rots. Their soul is reduced. The messenger of approaching death, the message of going into darkness and chaos and confusion and desolation will be sent against them. It says that acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent, the Lord detests them both, right? It's not enough to turn the other cheek or something. People have to be in the spirit of justice. They have to take moral action, because the Lord detests when people acquit the guilty. You have to treat them as if they're guilty. You have to treat them in a way that's fair and just and right. You have to consider their obstacles, but you have to rebuke them, right? It says in Luke 17:3, if your brother sins, rebuke him. If he repents, forgive him. If he repents. And one whose heart is corrupt cannot tell the difference. One who has a log in their eye cannot tell the difference. First remove the log from your own eye, then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. It goes on to say in verse 26, if imposing a fine on the innocent is not good, surely to flog honest officials is not right. But before that, in verse 22, it says, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. And the wicked accept bribes in secret to pervert the course of justice. So they're saying that romantic justice is a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And that the wicked seek to pervert the course of justice. So a happy heart makes the face cheerful, but heartache crushes the spirit. And a cheerful heart is good medicine, right? Healing, divine healing. But a crushed spirit dries up the bones. And the wicked accept bribes in secret to pervert the course of justice. So the wicked have chosen to plot behind the scenes, is what Scripture is saying. So everyone in the Abrahamic faith should agree that behind the scenes there are people who are perverting the course of justice, and that includes perverting the course of romantic justice. Rather unfortunate. Proverbs 13, verse 13. Whoever scorns instruction will pay for it, but whoever respects a command is rewarded. The teaching of the wise is a fountain of life, turning a person from the snares of death, of spiritual death. Good judgment wins favor, but the way of the unfaithful leads to their destruction. So it says, have good judgment. Choose wisely. Date wisely. Live wisely. Marry wisely. Love with truth, derived from justice and righteousness. It goes on to say, a person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, a spiritual inheritance. But a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. So the sinner, right, that which, those who have will be given more, and those who do not have, even what they have, will be taken away. And that includes their ability to be romantic, right? You have to cultivate it over generations. Proverbs 14:10, each heart knows its own bitterness, and no one else can share its joy. So when you do somebody wrong, you got to make it right with that person. You can't say, hey, we're going to screen out the righteous and then try to make it right somewhere down the line, or our offspring will try to make it right with the world somewhere down the line. Because in Isaiah 57, it says the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. So who keeps reproducing? The wicked. Proverbs 14:13, even in laughter the heart may ache, and rejoicing may end in grief. Proverbs 19:28, a corrupt witness mocks justice, and the mouth of the wicked gulps down evil. So a corrupt witness doesn't appreciate justice. They mock justice. They pretend, they feign justice. They don't truly live and teach and preach romantic justice. They mock it. And wait till this kind of truck drives by. So again, that scripture is very key. Proverbs 19, verse 28. A corrupt witness mocks justice, and the mouth of the wicked gulps down evil. Penalties are prepared for mockers, and beatings for the backs of fools. They're talking about spiritually. Spiritual punishments are prepared for those who are mockers, those who make fun of people like me, those who pretend to be for justice and aren't really for it, those who pretend to be living a life that's respectable when it's not. What they're doing is not really respectable. Their life isn't really respectable. So let's look at Proverbs 16:15. When a king's face brightens, it means life. His favor is like a rain cloud in spring. So why is this happening to America? Well, first of all, people kept breeding people who are indifferent. They kept breeding people who don't stand for what's right. They kept practicing romantic injustice, so they kept doing the wrong things. They kept elevating the wrong leaders in that worldly sense of the word, elevate. They kept insisting on what's wrong. The fruit that they kept bearing was the fruit of wickedness and injustice. And the fruit of romantic injustice breeds romantic injustice and injustice in general. So when a king's face brightens, right, the throne is established in righteousness, and true love is derived from righteousness and justice. So when a king's face brightens, it means life, the way, the truth, and the life. His favor is like a rain cloud in spring. So Christ returns on a cloud, right, as the top martial artist, a figurative cloud. And his favor is for those who live justice, those who practice righteousness and justice. He does not favor the wicked. Those who are like the 10 virgins, the parable of the 10 virgins, the 5 virgins that had it correct, who are prepared to do what's right. Not those who fell into the government's trap, into Babylon's trap, and they joined these cults and these social clubs and these secret societies and these corporate movements, and they date with a corporate scale instead of a scale of universal pinpoint and moral precision. Without moral precision, love isn't love. It's just to be discarded. Without moral precision, what they claim is love is just evil. Before a downfall, the heart is haughty, but humility comes before honor. One's willingness to humble themselves to be righteous instead of indulge in wickedness is very important, and it determines their human worth. To answer before listening, that is folly and shame. To not hear me out, that is folly and shame. One must choose to be righteous. One must choose to be just. We see in Proverbs 24:24, whoever says to the guilty, you are innocent, will be cursed by peoples and denounced by nations. And that goes back to the scripture I said before, that the Lord detests people who acquit the guilty. So the prophets are supposed to prophesy against the wicked. And they're supposed to tell the guilty they're guilty and the innocent the innocent. And they're supposed to judge. In Matthew 7 it says, first remove the log from your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So you're supposed to remove the log from your own eye, and then you're supposed to judge. You're supposed to judge to help them along the way, to give them the correction that comes from God when one sees clearly, when one thinks clearly, when one moves with moral, mental, spiritual, and romantic justice. Okay, so let me just wrap this up here with Proverbs 15:16. Better a little with the fear of the Lord than great wealth with turmoil. It's better to be righteous and fear God and do things out of love for God than to pursue ill-gotten gains. Better a small serving of vegetables with love than a fattened calf with hatred. It's better to truly have true love and to resent the wicked than to think that you have true love and to propound a false love, which is hating God and the righteous. Spiritual war, the spirit versus the flesh, the higher desires versus the filthy lower desires.
Oh, did you get the Frangelico? I did get the Frangelico, and it was delightful. Yeah.
Better the poor whose walk is blameless than much gain with injustice. I might have quoted that one wrong here. Better to be lowly in spirit with the oppressed than to share plunder with the proud. Going back to those ill-gotten gains. Don't let your marriages be ill-gotten gains. Don't let your careers, don't let your life gains be ill-gotten gains. Better to be lowly in spirit with the oppressed than to share plunder with the proud. Humble yourself to God and serve God. Okay, so let's wrap this up by saying the last two scriptures here. Oh, let's just finish this page here. Better the poor whose walk is blameless than a fool whose lips are perverse. It's better a poor righteous person than a rich person who's a fool, who rejects God, who rejects doing for the least of the brethren. Gold there is and rubies in abundance, but lips that speak knowledge are a rare jewel. It's better to tell the truth about what matters most, universal pinpoint and moral precision, than to be a rich fool. A fortune made by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a deadly snare. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed for the right reasons is better than silver or gold. One who oppresses the poor to increase his wealth, and one who gives gift to the rich, both come to spiritual poverty, and they're headed to hell. Do not let your heart envy sinners, but always be zealous for the fear of the Lord. Always have a passion for the fear of God.